Chapter 1. A Place Lost to Fog and Ash. December 19th, 1871. That date was scratched into the last known ledger from Vale Priory, a once-forgotten Anglican poorhouse buried deep in the Yorkshire moors. The ink was brown, as if it had dried in blood, and the handwriting was no longer the matron's. The official record lists 31 names, but none were ever found. Not a single body, not a single trace. Just silence. They called it a structural collapse, a miscalculated storm, a fever dream, whatever helped them sleep. But the land remembers. I first came across the Priory while reviewing confiscated Church of England correspondences, tucked inside a brittle folder labeled Abandoned Institutions Northern Circuit. I found a black and white photograph, warped with age. The building stood stark against a bruised sky, no windows lit, no smoke from the chimneys. Just a line of children, motionless in the courtyard, their faces blurred. One child, front and center, didn't appear on the orphanage register, no name, no record, and she was holding a hymn sheet, a hymn that doesn't appear in any Anglican archive, titled simply, They Shall Rise as Vapor. The Priory was originally built in 1792, not as a home, but as a cloister, a reclusive site for a group of breakaway clerics. Those records were burned in 1810 after a fire consumed the east wing. Some say it was lightning. Others say it started in the bell tower at midnight while no one was inside. By 1858, the Crown seized the grounds and repurposed the ruins into a state-sanctioned poorhouse, a place to store the forgotten, children of debtors, widows of the cholera years, those left behind by the Industrial Revolution. Vale Priory had no schoolhouse, no doctor, and no exit records. Once admitted, you were rarely seen again. Chapter 2. I found the matron's journal. Donated. Her name was Agnes Wren, to the Yorkshire born in 1828. They show the daughter of a coal merchant, but one of the first women in the region to complete church-administered education, by all accounts. Matron Wren was a practical woman, devout, but not delusional, strict, but not cruel. She arrived at Vale Priory in the spring of 1865, after the previous matron, Eliza Dreer, was declared missing. No explanation was ever recorded. Wren's early letters describe a place in disrepair, walls slick with damp, candles burning down too fast, children waking with scratches on their backs, and no memory of dreams. She wrote of nightly drafts that smelled like rust and bells that rang on their own. In one entry, dated November 3rd, 1867, she wrote, The children speak of a girl in the attic corridor, a girl who carries no candle, who does not blink, and who walks with her hands folded in prayer. I have searched each room. I find no such child. Yet her muddy footprints appear each morning outside the linen closet. Another page, water-stained and torn at the edges, reads, I have locked the chapel doors. There is music at night. Hymnals no longer used. The notes come sour, as if the choir sings underwater. There is no record of the chapel being used after 1870, but among the Priory's salvaged effects, one item stood out, a small black book hidden behind the altar, Agnes Wren's final journal. Inside, her handwriting had changed, more frantic, uneven, the strokes heavy and forced. There were no dates, only phrases, repeated over and over between drawings of eyes. The black-veiled girl, the locked wing, 31 will rise, not by breath, but by memory. The final line, chapter scrawled diagonally, the sealed wing across the back cover. When surveyors first returned to Vale Priory in 1882, after the last 11 years after the disappearance, they found the eastern wing still intact, not collapsed, not burned, but sealed. An iron gate fused at the hinges, 3 wooden doors bolted from the outside, and above each, hand-carved symbols, worn nearly smooth by time. The survey notes mention a peculiar temperature drop, a stillness unnatural even for Yorkshire. One man, Thomas Gill, wrote, "It was as if the air had been drained out. Our voices would not carry. I lit a match and it would not stay lit." Something was listening. Behind one door, they found a corridor, narrow, with no windows, and 12 identical doors, each one locked, no key found. But something was heard, not movement, not breath, but humming, a child's voice, faint, out of tune, repeating a verse no one recognized. They recorded the sound on wax cylinder, but when replayed in London, the hum was gone, only the crackle remained, and beneath it, a whisper. "You were never meant to open this." The survey was abandoned after 3 days. Thomas Gill disappeared the following year. His wife claimed he'd begun speaking to the fireplace at night, calling it the window back. Nothing further was documented about the eastern wing, until its floor plans were anonymously donated over a century later. Those blueprints show an additional room, not listed anywhere else, buried deep beneath the chapel foundation, accessed only by a narrow stair. Behind Chapter 4, The Forgotten Room. In Latin, the room beneath the chapel was not on any map, not in the parish records, not even in the Crown's archives, but it was real, unearthed accidentally in 2023 when a construction crew began clearing the priory ruins for redevelopment. They had planned to turn the grounds into private cottages, luxury retreats for tourists craving history, but within hours, they stopped digging. Beneath the altar, they found a sealed hatch, iron bolts, rusted shut, lined with strips of cloth, soaked in what appeared to be salt and ash. When opened, the smell was instant, like old wood, wet wool, and burnt incense. The room was circular, stone-lined, with no windows. Just a narrow altar, a basin filled with dried wax, and 31 wooden chairs, arranged in a ring. Each chair bore a name, carved carefully into the backrest. The names matched the final ledger. All 31 residents of Vale Priory. At the center of the room sat a small iron cradle, empty, but swaying. There were no doors, no means of escape, and no signs of struggle, but carved into the wall behind the altar, in that same frantic hand, from Agnes Wren's journal, was a final message. We are not dead. We are remembered, and memory is a doorway. A photo was taken before the room was resealed, but when examined days later, the image had changed. The chairs were facing outward. The photograph that changed after hearing the tape. Was a small black-veiled figure. I returned to the original sitting photograph, upright, the one from the diocesan folder. The children in the courtyard, the blurred faces, the extra figure no one could name. But something was different now. The girl in the center, the one holding the hymn sheet. Her head was turned, not down as before, but toward the camera, and though her face was still blurred. Her hand was raised, as if mid-blessing, or mid-warning. Behind her, one of the upper windows in the Priory had changed too. In the original photo, it had been empty. Now, it showed a shape, tall, robed, motionless. The grain of the photo had deepened, like it was aging faster than it should. I ran it through digital enhancement. It revealed what the human eye had missed. In the lower left corner, carved faintly into the stone step beneath the children's feet, was an inscription. 31 remain. The door was memory. You opened it. Since that night, the photo has refused to scan. Every attempt results in a blank file, or static, or worse, a mirror image of my own
Chapter 7,
face.
the photo
Eyes
that watches
closed,
back.
mouth sewn shut.
Since the photograph changed, I've kept it locked in a drawer, but some nights it's not there. I'll find it elsewhere, on my desk, at the foot of the stairs, once resting on my pillow, always the same image. But the figure in the window is getting clearer. Last week, her face began to show, not fully, just the outline of her veil, and a single glassy eye. The hymn sheet in the girl's hands now shows words, faded, but legible. Do not forget us. Memory is breath. Sing or remain. I no longer hear silence in my home. There's humming in the walls, low, childlike, broken. Last night, I blinked and the photograph was upside down, and behind every child was a chair, every one empty, except for the girl. She had turned again. This time, Chapter 8, the memory that opens. I burned the photograph, watched the corners curl, the faces distort in the flame, but by morning, it was back, perfectly intact, resting on the windowsill, still warm. I've begun to dream of the Priory, rooms I've never seen, hallways slick with soot, a cold stone floor beneath my bare feet. Each night I walk farther in, and each morning I wake with salt on my skin, fingernails gray with ash. 2 nights ago, I found myself in the circular room beneath the chapel. The chairs were filled now, faces lowered, hands folded, each one softly humming. Only the cradle in the center remained empty, and the door behind me was gone. But the girl was there, the black-veiled child, watching from the shadows with her eyes wide open. She did not move, but I heard her speak, not aloud, but within my thoughts. You see us now. You remember. You opened the door. When I woke, the hymn sheet was on my floor, real, heavy, dusted with wax. At the bottom, Chapter 9, trembling ink, the last hymn. One more chair remains. The church has denied all knowledge. When I sent them a scanned copy of the hymn sheet, they replied it must be a forgery. There is no record, they said, of any hymn titled, "They Shall Rise as Vapor." But I've now found it in 4 separate places: the margins of Agnes Wren's journal, the back of a funeral notice from 1871, a chalkboard from the demolished schoolroom near the Priory grounds, and scratched faintly into the base of the cradle beneath the chapel. The melody haunts me. I hum it without meaning to. I've heard it in the pipes, in the wind outside my window, even in the dial tone of my phone. Each time it finishes, I feel something behind me, not quite present, but waiting. I visited the ruins last week, just once, to stand where the chapel had been, to see if the land still remembered. There was no sign of the foundation, but someone had placed a single wooden chair in the center of the grass, fresh, untouched by weather, facing east. On the seat, a mirror covered in cloth, and beneath it, a message carved into the wood. One more must remember, to keep the door closed And now
Chapter 10. The
I
chair
understand
and the mirror.
the girl, she's
I
not
no
coming.
longer sleep.
She's already
Not
here.
truly. Each night, I wake just past 2:16 a.m. Always 2:16. The exact time every clock at Vale Priory stopped. And always. The chair is there. Sometimes at the foot of my bed. Sometimes reflected behind me in mirrors that shouldn't show it. It doesn't creak, doesn't move. But every time I look away, it's closer. I tried covering my mirrors, but in their place came reflections in glass, in puddles, in the gleam of my own eyes. The hymn plays faintly now, even in silence, like it's under the world, and I'm the only one tuned to hear it. I received one final envelope last night, no stamp, just laid at my door. Inside, a photograph, a new one, taken from above, looking down into that circular chamber. Beneath the priory, all 31 chairs filled, and in the center, the cradle, gone. In its place, a chair, empty, waiting, and written across the back of the photograph, in Agnes Wren's unmistakable hand. Memory never rests. They've torn the priory down now. What was left of it? Developers moved in fast, cleared the chapel ruins, leveled the eastern wing. Luxury homes rise where the dead once lingered, but even stone forgets, only for so long. Buyers report strange noises, humming in empty rooms, doors found open when no one was home, a child's handprint on a mirror. Despite no children living there, the local parish denies any connection. The church refuses to respond. But I've seen the permits. Every home, built precisely where a chair once stood. 31 homes, and one still unpurchased, still empty. The agents say buyers feel uneasy there. That time feels wrong in that place. And every photograph taken of the living room shows something faint. In the far wall mirror, a chair facing the wrong way, with a figure seated in it, veiled,